The crystal wine glass felt cold against my trembling fingers as I watched my husband of 7 years pour liquid death into my anniversary dinner. I stood frozen in the restaurant's marble hallway, my heart hammering so loud I was sure the elegant diners at nearby tables could hear it. The golden light from the chandeliers above cast long shadows across Enzo's face, making him look like a stranger. But then again, maybe he always had been. "Mrs. Katrina? Are you feeling all right?" The soft voice of our waitress Helena broke through my trance. I turned to see her concerned brown eyes studying my pale face. She was young, maybe 25, with kind features that reminded me of my sister. I'm fine," I whispered, though we both knew it was a lie. Through the archway I could see Enzo at our corner table. Table 12. The same table where he had proposed to me 8 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was stirring something into my wine with a small silver spoon, his movements careful and practiced. Like he'd done this before. My stomach twisted into knots. How long had he been planning this? Days? Weeks? Months? The restaurant buzzed with life around me. Couples celebrating anniversaries. Families sharing laughter. Business partners making deals. None of them knew that a woman was about to be murdered just 30 feet away from their dessert plates. I pressed my back against the cool marble wall and closed my eyes. 3 hours ago I had been excited about our anniversary dinner. I had worn my best black dress, the one Enzo always said made my green eyes sparkle. I had spent 2 hours getting ready, hoping tonight would bring us closer together. How foolish I had been. The documents little Gina had brought me from Enzo's office flashed through my mind. Bank statements showing money being moved to accounts I didn't know existed. Love letters to someone named Wilma Leonardo. Legal papers that would transfer my inheritance to him if something happened to me. My inheritance. The $3 million my grandmother had left me. The money that was supposed to secure our daughter's future. "Ma'am." Helena touched my arm gently. "Should I call someone?" I opened my eyes and looked at her. Really looked at her. She had her whole life ahead of her. He probably believed in love and happy endings and faithful husbands. I envied her innocence. "No," I said, my voice stronger now. "But thank you." I straightened my shoulders and took a deep breath. The scared, naive Katrina who had walked into this restaurant was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew exactly what needed to be done. I walked back toward table 12, my heels clicking against the polished floor like a countdown timer. Enzo looked up as I approached, his handsome face breaking into that charming smile that had fooled me for so many years. "There you are, beautiful," he said, standing to pull out my chair. I was starting to worry. "Just freshening up," I replied, settling into my seat. My eyes fell on the wine glass he had prepared for me. The liquid inside looked innocent enough, but I knew better. Enzo raised his own glass. "To 7 wonderful years and many more to come." The lie rolled off his tongue so easily. I wondered if he felt anything at all as he prepared to watch me drink poison on our anniversary. "To the future," I replied, lifting my glass but not drinking. The restaurant continued its gentle symphony around us. Soft piano music from the corner. The clink of silverware against china. Quiet conversations and occasional bursts of laughter. It was the perfect setting for a romantic evening. Or a murder. I set my glass down and smiled at my husband. "Enzo, darling, would you mind checking on something for me? I think I left my lipstick in the car." His dark eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Impatience? Annoyance? "Can't it wait until after dinner? It's my grandmother's vintage Chanel. You know how much it means to me." He sighed and stood up. "Of course. Anything for you." As soon as he left the table, I acted. My hands moved with purpose, switching our wine glasses in one smooth motion. The poisoned drink that had been meant for me now sat in front of his chair. I sat back and waited. When Enzo returned, he was carrying my small silver purse. "Found it in the glove compartment," he said, settling back into his seat. "Thank you." I reached across the table and took his hand. It felt cold. "You're always taking such good care of me." Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt? Or just annoyance that I was delaying his plan? He picked up his wine glass, my wine glass, and held it toward me. "Now where were we?" "To the future," I repeated. He brought the glass to his lips and drank deeply. I watched every drop go down his throat, knowing that each sip was sealing his fate. He said, setting the glass down. This wine is exceptional. You should try yours. I lifted my glass, his glass, and pretended to sip. It is lovely. For the next 20 minutes we made small talk. He told me about his day at the office. I mentioned that little Gina had drawn him a picture. We discussed plans for her upcoming 4th birthday party. All the while I watched him, waiting, wondering how long it would take. It started small. A slight tremor in his left hand as he reached for his bread. A moment of confusion when he forgot what he was saying mid-sentence. Are you feeling all right? I asked, playing the concerned wife perfectly. Just tired, he said, but I could see the worry starting to creep into his features. By the time our main courses arrived, his speech was beginning to slur slightly. The waitress Helena noticed too. She kept glancing at our table with concerned eyes. Enzo. I reached across the table and touched his forehead. You feel warm. He tried to stand up but stumbled slightly. I don't feel. That's when the real panic set in. His eyes went wide as he realized something was terribly wrong. He looked at his wine glass, then at mine, then back at me. And in that moment, understanding dawned in his dark eyes. The confusion. The fear. The horrible realization that his perfect plan had been turned against him. You. He gasped, his voice barely a whisper. Shoo, I said softly, standing up and moving around the table to steady him. Don't make a scene, darling. Other diners were starting to notice now. An elderly couple at the next table was whispering and pointing. A businessman near the window had pulled out his phone. Helena rushed over with genuine concern written across her young face. Should I call an ambulance? Yes, please, I said, my voice full of perfectly performed panic. I think my husband is having some kind of medical emergency. Enzo tried to speak, but his tongue was thick and unresponsive. Whatever he had intended for me was working exactly as he had planned, except on the wrong person. It's okay, baby, I whispered in his ear as I helped lower him back into his chair. Everything's going to be okay. His eyes blazed with helpless fury. He knew what I had done, but he couldn't tell anyone. The substance had stolen his voice along with his motor functions. Perfect. The next few minutes were organized chaos. Helena called 911 while other restaurant staff moved curious diners away from our table. Maria, the hostess, brought a glass of water. The elderly woman from the neighboring table kept asking if there was anything she could do to help. I played my part flawlessly, the devoted wife, shocked and terrified by her husband's sudden collapse. I held his hand and stroked his hair and made all the right worried noises while secretly marveling at how efficiently his own poison was destroying him. The paramedics are on their way, Helena announced breathlessly. Thank you, I managed between fake sobs. I don't understand what happened. We were just having a lovely dinner and then suddenly. These things happen sometimes, the elderly man said kindly. My brother-in-law had a stroke last year. Came out of nowhere. So, yes, that's exactly what this would look like to the medical professionals. Enzo had chosen his substance well. Something that would mimic natural causes perfectly. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes, its red and blue lights flashing through the restaurant's elegant windows. The paramedics were professional and efficient, quickly assessing Enzo's condition while asking me rapid-fire questions about his medical history. Has he been under any unusual stress lately? Asked the lead paramedic, a middle-aged woman named Carmen. He's been working very long hours, I replied truthfully. Big case at the law firm. I've been worried about him. Any history of heart problems? Stroke? High blood pressure? His father died of a heart attack when Enzo was 25, I said. Another truth. We've always worried about his health. They loaded him onto a stretcher, his body limp and unresponsive. I climbed into the ambulance beside him, still playing the terrified wife. It's going to be okay, I whispered, squeezing his paralyzed hand. The doctors will take good care of you. During the ride to the hospital I called Luna. It's happening, I said when she answered. We're on our way to St. Mary's Hospital. Oh my God, Luna breathed. Are you okay? I'm fine. But Enzo. I let my voice break convincingly. The doctors think it might be a stroke. I'll be right there. Next I called Enzo's brother Roberto. Roberto was 2 years older than Enzo and worked as a contractor. He had never married, preferring to spend his free time riding motorcycles and dating women half his age. But he loved his brother fiercely. Roberto, it's Katrina, I said, letting tears creep into my voice. Something terrible has happened. What's wrong? It's Enzo. We were at dinner for our anniversary and he just collapsed. The doctors think he might have had a stroke. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. Which hospital? Roberto finally asked. St. Mary's. Roberto, I'm scared. I'm on my way. My final call was to Enzo's mother, Elena. She had never approved of me, thought her precious son could have done better than a middle-class girl from the suburbs. But she would expect to be notified if something had happened to him. Elena, it's Katrina. I have some terrible news. I explained the situation again, listening to her sharp intake of breath when I mentioned the word stroke. I'll be on the next flight from Phoenix, she said tersely. Don't let them make any major medical decisions until I get there. Of course not. As we pulled up to the hospital, I took Enzo's lifeless hand in mine one more time. This is what happens when you betray the people who love you, I whispered so quietly that even the paramedics couldn't hear me. You reap what you sow, darling. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as I packed Gina's lunch for preschool. My 4-year-old daughter sat at the breakfast table, her dark curls bouncing as she colored in her princess coloring book. Mommy, can I have extra cookies today? She asked, not looking up from her careful work on Cinderella's dress. Just 2, sweetheart, I replied, adding her favorite chocolate chip cookies to her frozen lunchbox. Remember what we talked about? Too much sugar makes your tummy hurt. Gina nodded solemnly as if this was the most important information in the world. Everything was serious business when you were 4 years old. The house felt too quiet without Enzo. He had left early for a business meeting in the city, kissing my cheek and promising to be home in time for dinner. That was 3 hours ago and I was already missing him. Or at least I thought I was. Mommy, Gina said suddenly, sliding off her chair. I forgot to give you something. She disappeared toward the living room, her little feet pattering across the hardwood floors. I could hear her rummaging around in her toy box, muttering to herself about important papers. When she came back, she was clutching a manila folder against her chest. Daddy left this in my playroom yesterday, she announced proudly. He said it was very important work stuff, but I think he forgot about it. My heart did a little flip. Enzo never left work documents lying around, especially not in Gina's playroom. He was obsessive about keeping his business life organized and separate from our home life. Are you sure Daddy left this for me? I asked, taking the folder from her small hands. Aha. Gina climbed back onto her chair. He was talking on the phone in there yesterday when I was napping. He said bad words, so I pretended to sleep more. I opened the folder, expecting to see boring legal contracts or client information. Instead, I found bank statements. Lots of them. Accounts I had never seen before with my name on them but signatures I hadn't written. My hands started shaking as I flipped through the pages. Money transfers. Large ones. Funds being moved from our joint accounts into private ones. My inheritance from Grandma Rose, $3 million that was supposed to be untouchable, had been slowly disappearing over the past 6 months. Mommy. Gina's voice seemed far away. Are you okay? I looked up to find her watching me with worried brown eyes. She had inherited Enzo's eyes, but thankfully that seemed to be all she had gotten from him. I'm fine, baby girl, I managed to say. Just looking at some of Daddy's work papers. But I wasn't fine. I was falling apart inside. I kept reading. Beneath the bank statements were emails. Printed conversations between Enzo and someone named Wilma Leonardo. The subject lines made my stomach turn. Can't wait to be together permanently. The plan is working perfectly. She suspects nothing. I clicked through email after email, watching my marriage dissolve before my eyes. Enzo and this Wilma woman had been planning something for months. Maybe longer. And then I found the legal documents. Life insurance policies I had never signed. A will that left everything to Enzo if something happened to me. Power of attorney papers giving him complete control over my inheritance. All with my forged signature. My coffee mug slipped from my numb fingers and shattered on the kitchen floor. Gina jumped at the sound. Mommy. It's okay, I said quickly, kneeling to clean up the pieces. Just an accident. But it wasn't an accident. Nothing about this was an accident. This was planned. Calculated. My husband had been systematically stealing from me and preparing to, what? What was the end game here? I kept reading, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the papers. There was a handwritten note in Enzo's careful script. Anniversary dinner, Rossetti's restaurant, table 12, 8 p.m. Time to finish this. Today's date was written at the top. Our anniversary dinner. The romantic evening I had been looking forward to for weeks. My blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. The money being stolen. The forged documents. The life insurance policies. The mysterious girlfriend. Enzo wasn't planning to run away with my money. He was planning to eliminate me for it. "Mommy, you're scaring me," Gina whispered. I looked up to find tears streaming down my face. I quickly wiped them away and forced a smile. "Sorry, sweetheart. Mommy just remembered something sad. But it's okay now." I gathered all the papers and stuffed them back into the folder. My mind was racing, trying to process everything I had learned. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of believing I was loved and cherished and safe. 7 years of being a fool. "Are we still going to see Aunt Luna today?" Gina asked, returning to her coloring book as if nothing had happened. "Yes," I said, though I had forgotten all about our plans to visit my sister. "Yes, we definitely are. I needed to talk to someone. I needed to figure out what to do. And I needed to keep Gina safe while I did it." The phone rang, making me jump. Enzo's name flashed on the caller ID. For a moment I just stared at it. How do you answer the phone when you've just discovered your husband is planning to murder you? "Hello," I said, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. "Hey beautiful," Enzo's warm voice came through the speaker. "Just calling to confirm our dinner tonight. 8 o'clock at Rossetti's, right?" "Right," I replied. "I'm looking forward to it." The lie tasted bitter in my mouth. "Me too," he said. "I love you, Katrina." "I love you too." Another lie. But this one hurt more because 12 hours ago it would have been true. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen surrounded by the broken pieces of my coffee mug and my marriage, trying to figure out how to survive the next 24 hours. Gina looked up from her coloring book. "Mommy, why are you crying again?" I wiped my eyes and knelt down next to her chair. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're thinking about difficult things. But you know what? What? No matter what happens, Mommy will always protect you. Always. Do you understand? She nodded seriously. Like how wolves protect their babies. Exactly like that. I hugged her tight, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. She was the only good thing that had come from my marriage to Enzo. The only thing worth saving. As I held my daughter, a plan began forming in my mind. It wasn't a good plan. It wasn't a nice plan. But it was the only plan that guaranteed Gina and I would both be alive tomorrow morning. If Enzo wanted to play deadly games, then I would show him how they were really played. Luna's apartment smelled like lavender and fresh bread, the kind of comforting sense that made you feel safe the moment you walked through the door. My sister had always been the domestic one, the one who could turn any space into a home with just a few candles and some carefully placed throw pillows. "More coffee?" she asked, refilling my mug for the third time. Her green eyes, so much like mine, were filled with concern. "Thanks." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, grateful for something to hold on to. Gina was in the living room, completely absorbed in Luna's collection of picture books. We could hear her talking to herself, narrating the stories in her serious 4-year-old voice. "So let me get this straight," Luna said, settling into the chair across from me at her small kitchen table. "You found bank statements showing that Enzo has been stealing your inheritance, emails proving he's having an affair, and legal documents that suggest he's planning to eliminate me," I finished quietly. "You can say it, Luna. That's what all the evidence points to." My sister's face went pale. She was 5 years younger than me, 28 to my 33. And despite being a successful therapist, she still had an innocence about her that I envied. "Katrina, this is insane. People don't just... Enzo seems so normal. So loving. That's what makes it so perfect," I said, pulling the manila folder from my purse. "Look at this." I spread the documents across her kitchen table like a detective laying out evidence. Bank statements showing systematic theft. Love letters to another woman. Life insurance policies I had never signed. Luna picked up one of the emails between Enzo and Wilma Leonardo. Her hands trembled as she read. "My darling Wilma," she read aloud. "Soon we'll be together permanently. The plan is working perfectly. Case suspects nothing. After the anniversary dinner, everything will be ours. All her grandmother's money, the house, everything. We just have to be patient a little longer." She looked up at me with horror in her eyes. "Oh my God, Katrina. This is real. As real as it gets." Luna stood up abruptly and began pacing around her small kitchen. "We have to call the police. Right now. We have to." "And tell them what?" I interrupted. "That my husband is planning to eliminate me based on some vague emails and financial documents? They'll say it's a domestic dispute. They'll tell us to call if something actually happens. But this is evidence." "Evidence of what, exactly? Adultery? Financial fraud? Those are civil matters, Luna. The police won't do anything until after he actually tries to hurt me." "Then don't go to dinner tonight. Stay here. We'll figure something else out." I shook my head. "Running won't solve anything. He'll just try again later when I'm not expecting it. And next time I might not have advance warning." Luna stopped pacing and stared at me. "What are you saying?" I took a deep breath. What I was about to tell my sister would change everything between us. But I needed her to understand. "I'm saying that sometimes when someone is trying to destroy you, the only way to survive is to destroy them first." "Katrina, no. You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." I gathered the papers back into the folder. "Enzo has made his choice. Now I'm making mine. But you could go to prison. You could lose Gina. I could lose Gina anyway if I'm dead." The room fell silent except for the sound of Gina's voice from the living room, reading a story about a brave princess who saved herself. Luna sat back down heavily. "Tell me you have a better plan than murder." "I do." I leaned forward and lowered my voice. "But I need your help." For the next hour I explained everything. How the anniversary dinner at Rossetti's was clearly meant to be my last meal. How Enzo would probably try to make my death look like an accident or natural causes. How I had already figured out a way to turn his own plan against him. "You want me to lie to the police," Luna said when I finished. "I want you to corroborate my story." "That's different." "Not really." I reached across the table and took her hands. "Luna, I wouldn't ask this of you if there was any other way. But Enzo has left me no choice. It's either him or me." My sister stared down at our joined hands for a long time. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" Relief flooded through me. "Just be my alibi for this afternoon. If anyone asks, we spent the whole day together. Shopping, having lunch, playing with Gina. Normal sister things. That's it. That's it. I'll handle everything else." Luna nodded slowly. "And after tonight? What happens then?" "Then Enzo faces the consequences of his choices. And Gina and I get to live." We spent the rest of the afternoon playing with Gina and trying to act normal. Luna taught her how to make paper flowers while I researched restaurants on my phone. Specifically, I was looking at the layout of Rossetti's restaurant, studying the floor plan and trying to memorize where everything was located. Table 12 was in a corner, relatively private but still visible from the main dining area. Perfect for a romantic dinner. Or a murder. The ladies' restroom was down a short hallway past the bar. If I timed things right, I could see our table from the hallway entrance without Enzo spotting me. "Mommy, look." Gina held up a purple paper rose she had made with Luna's help. "It's for you. It's beautiful, sweetheart." I tucked the flower behind my ear and smiled at my daughter. "You're so talented. Aunt Luna says I have artist hands." She's absolutely right. As evening approached, my stomach began to knot with anxiety. In 2 hours I would be sitting across from my husband, pretending to celebrate our anniversary while knowing he planned to poison me. "Are you sure about this?" Luna asked quietly while Gina was distracted with her coloring. "I'm sure. Because once you do this, there's no going back." There was no going back the moment Enzo decided to steal from me and plan my murder. I stood up and smoothed down my black dress. Some lines once crossed can never be uncrossed. I hugged Gina goodbye, holding her a little longer than usual. "Be good for Aunt Luna, okay? Mommy will see you tomorrow." "Promise?" she asked, looking up at me with those serious brown eyes. "Promise." As I drove home to get ready for dinner, I thought about that promise. 24 hours ago, I wouldn't have been able to make it with certainty. I would have walked into that restaurant tonight as a trusting wife and walked out as a corpse. But now I had a fighting chance. The house felt different when I walked inside. The family photos on the mantel looked like lies. The wedding picture in our bedroom made me sick to my stomach. How long had Enzo been planning this? Had he ever loved me at all, or was I always just a means to an end? I took a long shower and did my makeup carefully. If this was going to be our last dinner together, I wanted to look perfect. I wanted him to see exactly what he was losing. The black dress he loved so much. The pearl necklace he had given me for our 5th anniversary. The perfume he had bought me for my birthday. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman preparing for war. My phone buzzed with a text from Enzo. On my way home to get ready. Can't wait to see you tonight, beautiful. I typed back. Me neither. I love you. The lies were getting easier. An hour later, Enzo walked through our front door with a bouquet of red roses and that charming smile that had fooled me for so many years. For my beautiful wife, he said, handing me the flowers. Happy anniversary. They're lovely, I replied, accepting his kiss on the cheek. Let me put them in water. As I arranged the roses in a vase, I watched him in the reflection of our kitchen window. He was checking his phone, probably texting his mistress. His expression was cold, calculating. Nothing like the loving husband he pretended to be when he thought I was watching. Ready to go? He asked, pocketing his phone. Ready. We drove to Rossetti's in comfortable silence, the radio playing soft jazz while the city lights blurred past our windows. To any outside observer, we looked like a happily married couple heading out for a romantic anniversary dinner. The perfect cover for murder. Enzo held my hand as we walked into the restaurant, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. Such a sweet gesture. Such a convincing performance. Mr. and Mrs. Valdez, the hostess Maria, greeted us warmly. Right this way to your table. Table 12. The corner table with the perfect view and the perfect privacy. As we settled into our seats, I looked around the restaurant with new eyes. These might be the last faces I ever saw. These strangers enjoying their meals and their conversations and their normal lives had no idea they were about to witness something terrible. You look stunning tonight, Enzo said, reaching across the table to take my hand. Thank you. I smiled at him. You clean up pretty well yourself. He was handsome, I had to give him that. Tall and dark with those expressive brown eyes that had first attracted me all those years ago. It was such a shame he was a sociopathic murderer. I took the liberty of ordering us a bottle of wine, he said, gesturing to our server, Helena. The 2018 Cabernet we had on our first date here. How romantic, I replied. You remember everything. I remember all our important moments. Including this one, I thought. The moment you planned to end our marriage permanently. Helena appeared with the wine bottle and 2 crystal glasses. I watched as she poured the deep red liquid, noting how Enzo's eyes followed her movements with unusual intensity. Would you like to start with appetizers? She asked. Give us a few minutes, Enzo replied. We're in no hurry. After she left, he raised his glass. To 7 wonderful years. To 7 wonderful years, I echoed, touching my glass to his. We both took a sip. The wine was perfect, rich and smooth with hints of cherry and oak. It would be a shame to waste it on murder. I need to powder my nose, I said, setting down my glass. I'll be right back. Of course. I stood up and walked toward the restroom, feeling his eyes on me the entire way. But instead of going inside, I positioned myself in the marble hallway where I could see our table clearly while remaining hidden in the shadows. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. Enzo was reaching into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small silver vial. He looked around the restaurant casually, making sure no one was watching, then unscrewed the tiny cap. My husband was about to spike my wine on our anniversary. I watched in horrible fascination as he poured the contents of the vial into my glass, stirring it gently with the small silver spoon from our sugar bowl. His movements were calm, practiced, like he had done this before. Maybe he had. When he was finished, he put the vial back in his pocket and sat back in his chair, checking his watch. Probably calculating how long it would take for whatever he had given me to work. I pressed my back against the cool marble wall and closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. Seeing the evidence on paper was one thing. Watching him actually try to murder me was something else entirely. But I was ready for this. I had planned for this. I just hoped I was strong enough to go through with it. My hands were surprisingly steady as I walked back to our table. All the fear and panic I had felt in the hallway melted away, replaced by a cold, focused calm that I didn't know I possessed. Enzo looked up as I approached, his face the picture of loving concern. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Much better." I settled back into my chair and reached for my wine glass. "Wait," Enzo said quickly. "Let me get Helena to bring us some appetizers first. You know how wine affects you on an empty stomach." How thoughtful. He wanted to make sure I was comfortable before he murdered me. "Good idea," I agreed, setting my glass back down. "I am feeling a bit hungry." Relief flickered across his features. He gestured to Helena, who hurried over with her notepad ready. "We'll have the bruschetta platter," Enzo said. "And maybe some of those stuffed mushrooms my wife loves so much." "Excellent choice," Helena replied. "I'll get that started for you right away." As she walked away, I studied my husband's face. He was handsome in that classic Italian way, strong jawline, olive skin, thick dark hair that was just starting to show a few silver threads at the temples. Women had always been attracted to him. I used to feel lucky that he had chosen me. Now I wondered how many others there had been besides Wilma Leonardo. "You're staring," Enzo observed with a smile. "Just admiring my husband." I reached across the table and touched his hand. 7 years and you still make my heart race." His expression softened, and for a moment I almost believed he felt something real for me. But then I remembered the documents hidden in my bedroom drawer and the substance sitting in my wine glass, and the moment passed. "You make me feel like the luckiest man alive," he said. The lies came so easily to both of us now. Our appetizers arrived and we made small talk while we ate. He told me about a new client at his law firm. I mentioned that Gina's preschool teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, thought she was gifted. We discussed plans for our upcoming vacation to the beach. All the while, my untouched wine glass sat between us like a loaded gun. "This bruschetta is amazing," I said, savoring the fresh tomatoes and basil. "I'm so glad we came here tonight." "Me too." Enzo's eyes kept drifting to my wine glass. "Aren't you going to drink your wine? It's your favorite." "I'm saving it for the main course," I replied. "You know how I like to pair things properly." A flash of impatience crossed his features, but he covered it quickly with another smile. "Of course. I love how sophisticated you are about these things." 20 minutes later, Helena returned to take our dinner orders. I chose the salmon with risotto. Enzo ordered the filet mignon medium rare. "And shall I bring fresh wine glasses?" Helena asked, noticing our barely touched drinks. "No need," I said quickly. "These are perfect." After she left, Enzo excused himself to the restroom. "Too much coffee today," he explained with an embarrassed laugh. The moment he was gone, I acted. My hands moved with surgical precision, switching our wine glasses in one smooth motion. The spiked drink that had been sitting in front of me now sat in front of his chair. I sat back and waited, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone in the restaurant could hear it. Enzo returned a few minutes later, looking relaxed and confident. He had no idea that his carefully laid plan was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible. "Sorry about that," he said, settling back into his chair. "Where were we?" "I think we were about to toast to our future," I suggested, lifting my wine glass, his wine glass. "Perfect." He picked up his glass, my poison glass, and held it toward me. "To many more years of happiness together." "To our future," I agreed. He brought the glass to his lips and took a long drink. I watched every drop go down his throat, knowing that each sip was sealing his fate. "This really is exceptional wine," he said, taking another generous sip. "We should buy a case for the house." "We should," I agreed, pretending to drink from my own glass. For the next 30 minutes, we talked and laughed like the happy couple we were pretending to be. Enzo finished nearly his entire glass of wine, complimenting the taste several times. He had no idea he was drinking his own poison. I found myself studying his face, looking for the first signs of whatever drug he had slipped into my wine. What had he chosen? Something that would mimic a heart attack? A stroke? An allergic reaction? Our dinner arrived and Enzo seemed perfectly fine as he cut into his steak. But about halfway through the meal, I noticed his hand trembling slightly as he lifted his fork. "Are you okay?" I asked, playing the concerned wife. "Just tired," he said, but his voice sounded slightly slurred. Long day at the office. By the time we were finished with our main courses, the tremor in his hands was more pronounced. He was blinking frequently like he was having trouble focusing. Enzo. I reached across the table and touched his forehead. You feel warm. I'm fine, he insisted, but when he tried to stand up to use the restroom again, he swayed on his feet. Helena noticed immediately. Sir, are you feeling all right? Just need some air, Enzo muttered, but his words were becoming increasingly unclear. That's when the real panic set in. His eyes went wide as he realized something was terribly wrong. He looked at his wine glass, then at mine, then back at me. And in that moment he knew. You. He gasped, his voice barely a whisper. Shoo, I said softly, moving around the table to steady him. Don't make a scene. Other diners were starting to notice now. Helena rushed over with a worried expression. Should I call an ambulance? She asked. Yes, I said, my voice full of fake panic. I think he's having some kind of attack. The next few minutes were chaos. Paramedics arrived. Enzo was loaded onto a stretcher, his eyes locked on mine the entire time. I rode with him in the ambulance, playing the terrified wife, holding his paralyzed hand. Why? He managed to whisper when we were alone. I leaned close to his ear. You are asking me why when you planned to harm your wife, Enzo. How heartless. Did you really think about our daughter when you planned? Well, I think you should know that I know about everything. His eyes filled with something between fear and rage, but his body couldn't respond. His poison had done its work perfectly. At the hospital, I called his brother Roberto to watch Gina. I called my sister Luna to come support me. I even called Enzo's mother, Elena, though she had never liked me much. Everyone rallied around the grieving wife. No one suspected that the loving husband lying paralyzed in the ICU bed had tried to murder me just hours before. The doctor said it looked like a stroke. Very sudden. Very severe. They ran tests, but the poison Enzo had chosen was clever. It mimicked natural causes perfectly. Ironic, really. As I sat in that sterile hospital waiting room, surrounded by concerned family members, I thought about the documents hidden in my bedroom drawer. The evidence of his betrayal. The proof of his plan. Tomorrow I would call my lawyer. I would file for divorce. I would take Gina and start over somewhere new. But tonight I sat beside his hospital bed and watched him lie there, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to hurt anyone ever again. The doctors say you might never walk again, I whispered to him when we were alone. They say your speech might never come back fully. His eyes blazed with helpless fury. Don't worry, I continued, smoothing his hospital blanket with gentle hands. I'll make sure everyone knows what a tragic accident this was. How we were just celebrating our anniversary when you suddenly collapsed. A tear rolled down his cheek. Whether it was from rage or regret, I didn't know. And I didn't care. Good night, Enzo, I said, kissing his forehead like a devoted wife. Sweet dreams. As I walked out of that hospital room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. St. Mary's Hospital smelled like disinfectant and despair. I sat in the waiting room, still wearing my black anniversary dress, while doctors ran tests on my paralyzed husband. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the institutional beige walls, and the sound of monitors beeping from nearby rooms created a constant electronic symphony of suffering. Luna arrived first, her hair still damp from a hasty shower and her eyes wide with concern. How is he? She asked, pulling me into a fierce hug. They don't know yet, I replied, grateful for the warmth of her embrace. The doctors are running tests. They think it might be a massive stroke. And you? How are you holding up? I pulled back and looked into her worried green eyes. My sister was the only person in the world who knew the truth about tonight, and the weight of that secret hung between us like a loaded weapon. I'm okay, I said quietly. Scared but okay. Luna nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind my words. What do you need me to do? Just be here. That's all I need right now. Roberto burst through the emergency room doors 20 minutes later, his leather jacket still smelling like motorcycle exhaust and his dark hair wind-blown from the ride. He looked so much like Enzo that for a moment my heart stopped. Where is he? Roberto demanded, scanning the waiting room with wild eyes. They have him in the ICU, I said, standing to greet him. The doctors are still running tests. Roberto pulled me into an awkward hug. We had never been particularly close, He thought I was too soft for his rough-and-tumble brother, but grief made strange bedfellows. What really happened? He asked. We were having dinner at Rossetti's, I explained, settling back into my plastic chair. Everything was normal. We were talking and laughing, celebrating our anniversary. Then suddenly Enzo started slurring his words. His hands were shaking. When he tried to stand up, he almost collapsed. Jesus. Roberto ran his hands through his hair. Did he say anything? About feeling sick or having pain? He said he was tired, but that's all. It happened so fast, Roberto. 1 minute he was fine and the next. I let my voice trail off and covered my face with my hands. The performance was becoming second nature. Dr. Gertrude Wong, the attending neurologist, emerged from the ICU an hour later with a grim expression on her professional face. She was a small woman in her 40s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Valdez? I'm Dr. Wong. I've been treating your husband. How is he? I asked, standing up quickly. Is he going to be okay? Dr. Wong gestured for us to sit down. Never a good sign. Your husband has suffered what appears to be a massive ischemic stroke, she explained carefully. There's been significant damage to the left side of his brain, affecting his motor functions and speech centers. What does that mean exactly? Roberto asked. It means he's paralyzed on his right side and may never regain full mobility. His speech will likely be severely impaired, possibly permanently. We're still assessing the extent of the cognitive damage. I felt Luna's hand squeeze mine. But he'll live. I asked. He should survive. But his quality of life. Dr. Wong shook her head. I won't lie to you. The damage is extensive. He'll require around-the-clock care for the foreseeable future. Perfect. Enzo would live, but he would be trapped in his own body, unable to speak or move or take care of himself. Unable to hurt anyone ever again. Justice had a poetic sense of humor sometimes. Can we see him? Roberto asked. One at a time and only for a few minutes. He's unconscious right now, but he may be able to hear you. I went first, walking down the sterile hospital corridor on shaking legs. The ICU was a maze of machines and monitors, with patients lying motionless in beds like broken dolls. Enzo was in room 314, hooked up to more machines than I could count. Tubes ran down his throat. Wires monitored his heart rate and brain activity. His face was slack and gray, all the handsome animation drained out of it. He looked smaller somehow. Diminished. I pulled a chair up next to his bed and took his lifeless hand in mine. Hi, sweetheart, I said softly in case any of the nurses were listening. It's me. His eyes were closed, but I could see them moving beneath his lids. Dreaming maybe. Or trying to wake up. The doctors say you're going to live, I continued, stroking his knuckles gently. That's the important thing. We'll get through this together just like we always have. I leaned closer and lowered my voice to barely a whisper. I found the papers, Enzo. All of them. The bank statements, the emails to Wilma, the forged life insurance documents. I know about everything. His heart monitor beeped a little faster, but his eyes remained closed. Did you really think I was that stupid? That I wouldn't figure out what you were planning? I squeezed his hand harder. You tried to destroy me on our anniversary. Our anniversary, Enzo. The day we promised to love each other forever. A single tear leaked from the corner of his closed eye and rolled down his cheek. But don't worry, I whispered. I'm not going to tell anyone. As far as the world knows, you had a tragic stroke while we were celebrating 7 years of marriage. Your devoted wife will stand by your side through this difficult time. I stood up and smoothed down my dress. Oh, and Enzo, I'll be filing for divorce as soon as you're stable enough to sign the papers. I'm taking Gina and we're starting over somewhere you'll never find us. I kissed his forehead gently like a loving wife would. Sweet dreams, darling. When I returned to the waiting room, Roberto was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. How did he look? He asked. Peaceful, I replied. Like he's just sleeping. Elena arrived on the red-eye from Phoenix, dressed in an expensive black suit and looking like she was attending a funeral. At 68, Enzo's mother was still a beautiful woman, with silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon and makeup applied with surgical precision. She had never liked me, but tonight she needed someone to blame for her son's condition. This is your fault, she announced the moment she walked into the waiting room. Elena, I started. Don't you, Elena, me? My son was perfectly healthy until he married you. All the stress from trying to support a wife and child, working himself to death to keep you in that big house. That's enough, Luna said sharply, standing up to face the older woman. Katrina is not responsible for what happened to Enzo. Isn't she? Elena's eyes were cold as winter. 7 years of marriage and now suddenly he has a stroke? At 35 years old? That doesn't just happen. It happens more often than you think, Roberto said quietly. I looked it up online while I was waiting. Young strokes are becoming more common. Elena wasn't interested in facts. She needed someone to hate and I was the convenient target. I want to see him, she demanded. Room 314, I said. But he's unconscious. After she left, Roberto sat down next to me with a heavy sigh. She's always been dramatic, he said apologetically. Don't take it personally. I know she's hurting, I replied. We all are. But I wasn't hurting. I was relieved. For the first time in months I felt safe. Enzo couldn't hurt me anymore. He couldn't steal from me or lie to me or try to murder me. He was trapped in that hospital bed as helpless as a newborn baby. The thought should have horrified me. But instead it filled me with a deep, satisfying sense of justice. Dr. Wong returned around midnight with an update. Your husband is stable, she announced. We're going to keep him sedated for the next few days while we monitor his brain activity, but the immediate danger has passed. And his prognosis? I asked. Unchanged. Significant paralysis and speech impairment. He'll need extensive rehabilitation and even then... She shook her head. I'm sorry. I wish I had better news. Thank you for everything you're doing, I said. As dawn broke over the city, painting the hospital windows with pale gold light, I finally allowed myself to acknowledge the truth. I had won. Enzo's plan to alimente me for my inheritance had backfired spectacularly. He would spend the rest of his life trapped in a damaged body, unable to speak or move or harm anyone else. His mistress would abandon him once she realized he wasn't going to be inheriting millions of dollars. His mother could blame me all she wanted, but she had no proof of anything except that her son had suffered a tragic medical emergency. I should get home to Gina, I told Luna as the morning shift of nurses began arriving. She'll be wondering where I am. I'll drive you, Luna offered. You shouldn't be alone right now. On the drive home, we didn't talk about what had really happened at Rossetti's restaurant. We didn't discuss the switched wine glasses or the poison or the justice that had been served. Instead, we talked about practical things. How to tell Gina that Daddy was sick. How to handle the media attention if the local news picked up the story. How to deal with Elena's accusations and Roberto's grief. Normal things. Innocent things. The kind of things a grieving wife would worry about. 3 weeks later, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing divorce papers while Enzo lay paralyzed in a rehabilitation facility across town. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was finally free to access my own inheritance, while he would never again be able to steal from anyone. My attorney, Gertrude Holbrook, was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in complex divorces. She had been recommended by Luna's friend Claire, who had used her services when she left her abusive ex-husband. Given your husband's condition, this should be straightforward, Gertrude said, sliding another document across her polished desk. You're not asking for alimony, you're keeping the house you inherited from your grandmother, and you're maintaining sole custody of your daughter. That's right. I signed my name with careful precision. I just want to start fresh. What about his medical expenses? The rehabilitation costs? His insurance will cover most of it. His mother has offered to help with the rest. I set down the pen and looked up at her. I know that might seem cold, but I have to think about Gina's future now. You don't need to justify anything to me, Gertrude said kindly. You're not responsible for your husband's medical bills, especially when you're divorcing. Plenty of spouses would do the same thing in your situation. If only she knew the real situation. The rehabilitation center was a cheerful place, full of inspirational posters and motivational slogans. I visited Enzo twice a week, playing the role of the supportive soon-to-be ex-wife who was trying to do the right thing. He had regained consciousness after 5 days, but the damage was exactly as Dr. Wong had predicted. The left side of his body was completely paralyzed. His speech was slurred and limited to simple words. His cognitive function seemed mostly intact, which meant he understood everything that was happening to him but couldn't do anything about it. A perfect prison. "Hello, Enzo," I said, settling into the visitor's chair beside his bed. "How are you feeling today?" He turned his head toward me with great effort, his dark eyes blazing with fury and frustration. Ka. He tried to say. "Take your time," I said patiently. "Katrina," he finally managed. "That's right. Very good." I spoke to him like he was a child learning to talk. "I brought you some pictures of Gina. She drew you a get well card." I showed him Gina's latest artwork. A stick figure drawing of our family with Daddy lying in a hospital bed and Mommy and Gina standing beside him. My 4-year-old daughter had no idea that Daddy had tried to murder Mommy. She just knew that Daddy was sick and couldn't come home. "She misses you," I lied smoothly. "But she understands that you need to stay here and get better." Enzo's eyes filled with tears. Whether from grief or rage I couldn't tell. "Why?" he whispered. "Why what, darling? Why did this happen?" I leaned closer and lowered my voice, even though his roommate was asleep and couldn't hear us. "You know why," I said softly. "You tried to poison me, Enzo. You tried to eliminate your own wife for money. This is what happens when you betray the people who love you." His face contorted with emotion, but his body couldn't respond to his brain's commands. He was trapped inside himself exactly as I had planned. "The divorce will be final next month," I continued conversationally. "I'm keeping the house and taking Gina to start over somewhere new. Your girlfriend Wilma stopped calling, by the way. Seems she's lost interest now that you're not inheriting my money." A broken sound escaped from his throat, half sob, half growl. "Don't worry," I said, standing up to leave. "I'll make sure Gina knows you loved her, even if you didn't love me." I kissed his forehead gently, the way a loving wife would, and walked out of his room without looking back. The hardest part was explaining everything to Gina. How do you tell a 4-year-old that Daddy is never coming home? How do you protect her innocence while preparing her for a life without her father? "Is Daddy going to die?" she asked one evening as I tucked her into bed. "No, sweetheart. Daddy isn't going to die. But his brain got hurt and now his body doesn't work the way it used to. He needs special doctors to take care of him. Can we visit him? Maybe someday when you're older. Right now the doctors think it's better if we let Daddy rest and get stronger." Gina accepted this explanation the way children accept most adult decisions, with resignation and trust that the grown-ups knew what they were doing. What she didn't know and would never know was that her father had planned to orphan her for money. 2 months after the stroke, Wilma Leonardo called me. I was in the middle of packing our belongings for the move to Portland, where Luna had found a job at a prestigious therapy practice and where we planned to start over together as a family. "Mrs. Valdez? This is Wilma Leonardo." My blood ran cold. "I'm sorry, who?" I was a friend of your husband's. I heard about his accident and I wanted to express my condolences." The nerve of this woman. Calling herself a friend when she had been planning to help murder me and steal my inheritance. "That's very kind of you," I said politely. "But I'm not sure Enzo ever mentioned you." A long pause. "We worked together on some legal cases. I was hoping I could visit him at the rehabilitation center. I'm afraid he's not accepting visitors right now. Doctor's orders." "Oh." Another pause. "Well, if there's anything I can do to help." "Actually, there is something," I said sweetly. "You could stay away from my family. Permanently." I hung up before she could respond. 3 days later, a private investigator named Jordan Torres came to my door. He was a heavy-set man in his 40s with kind eyes and a rumpled suit that had seen better days. "Mrs. Valdez? I'm sorry to bother you during this difficult time, but I was hoping you could answer some questions about your husband's medical emergency." My heart started racing, but I kept my expression calm and confused. "Questions? I don't understand." "I've been hired by Mr. Valdez's insurance company to investigate the circumstances surrounding his stroke. It's routine in cases involving such large potential payouts." "Of course. Please come in." I led him to the living room, where boxes of our belongings sat stacked and ready for the move to Portland. "Can you walk me through the events of that evening?" Jordan asked, pulling out a small notebook. I told him the same story I had told everyone else. The anniversary dinner. The normal conversation. The sudden onset of symptoms. the ambulance ride to the hospital. And your husband didn't complain of any symptoms earlier that day? Headaches, dizziness, unusual fatigue. He said he was tired when he got home from work, but that was normal. He'd been putting in very long hours at the law firm. Jordan nodded and scribbled in his notebook. The restaurant staff mentioned that you left the table at one point during dinner. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice steady. I went to the ladies' room. I couldn't have been gone more than 5 minutes. And when you returned, everything seemed normal? Completely normal. We ordered our main courses and continued talking. The symptoms didn't start until we were nearly finished eating. The wine glasses. Did either of you leave the table after the wine was poured? Enzo went to the restroom once, I think. But the wine had been sitting there for at least an hour before we drank any of it. Jordan made more notes. One final question, Mrs. Valdez. Are you aware of any enemies your husband might have had? Anyone who might have wanted to hurt him? I almost laughed at the irony. Enemies? No, not at all. Enzo was well liked by everyone. His clients, his colleagues, his family. I can't imagine anyone wanting to hurt him. After Jordan left, I called Luna. Someone's investigating, I told her. What kind of investigating? Insurance investigator. Asked a lot of questions about that night. Luna was quiet for a moment. Are you worried? No, I said and realized I meant it. There's no evidence of anything except what everyone already believes, that Enzo had a stroke during dinner. The poison is out of his system by now. The wine glasses were washed hours ago. There's nothing to find. Good. Because in 3 days we'll be in Portland and all of this will be behind us. But it wasn't behind us. Not entirely. The investigation continued for 2 more weeks, with Jordan Torres interviewing everyone who had been at Rossetti's that night. The staff, the other diners, even the paramedics who had responded to the emergency call. Finally, he came to see me one last time the day before our move to Portland. I wanted to let you know that I'm closing the case, he said. The insurance company is satisfied that your husband's stroke was a natural medical event. Relief flooded through me. Thank you for letting me know. There was one odd thing though, Jordan continued, watching my face carefully. The lab found traces of an unusual compound in your husband's blood work from that night. Something that could theoretically cause stroke-like symptoms. My heart stopped beating for several seconds. But, Jordan continued, the levels were so minute that the doctors concluded it was probably contamination from the hospital equipment. These things happen sometimes. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Besides, Jordan added with a slight smile, if someone had wanted to poison your husband, they would have had to switch the drink somehow. And according to everyone I interviewed, neither of you left the table long enough to do something like that without being noticed. Well, that's a relief, I managed to say. The idea that someone might have deliberately hurt Enzo is just unthinkable, Jordan agreed. You seem like a very devoted wife, Mrs. Valdez. I hope you and your daughter have a wonderful new life in Portland. After he left, I sat in my empty living room and finally allowed myself to cry. Not from guilt or remorse, but from sheer exhaustion. The performance was over. The case was closed. Enzo's plan to murder me had been foiled so completely that even the insurance investigators believed he was an innocent victim. Justice had been served. Portland in the spring was everything the travel brochures promised. Green and clean and full of possibilities. Luna and I found a beautiful craftsman house in the Hawthorne district, with a big backyard where Gina could play in mature oak trees that would provide shade in the summer. It had been 6 months since that night at Rossetti's restaurant. 6 months since I had watched my husband drink his own poison and collapse at our anniversary table. 6 months since I had discovered what it felt like to fight back against someone who wanted to destroy me. I was a different person now. Stronger. More aware. Less trusting. But also free. Mommy, look. Gina called from the backyard, where she was chasing butterflies through Luna's flower garden. There's a yellow one. I see it, baby girl, I called back, watching her run and laugh in the afternoon sunlight. She was thriving in Portland, making new friends at her preschool and showing no signs of missing her father. Children were resilient that way. They accepted change as a natural part of life. I wished I could be more like her. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. My blood ran cold when I read it. I know what you did. My hands started shaking as I stared at the screen. Who could know? The investigation was closed. The case was solved. Everyone believed Enzo was an innocent victim of a tragic medical event. The phone buzzed again. Meet me at Pioneer Courthouse Square tomorrow at 3 p.m. Come alone. I looked around the backyard, suddenly feeling like I was being watched. But there was nothing. Just Gina playing in the garden and Luna weeding the rose bushes and the neighbor's cat stalking a bird in the maple tree. Everything okay? Luna asked, noticing my pale face. Fine, I lied. Just work stuff. But it wasn't fine. Someone knew the truth about what had happened that night and they wanted to meet. The question was, who? I spent the rest of the evening trying to figure out who could have discovered my secret. Jordan Torres, the insurance investigator? Dr. Wong from the hospital? Helena, the waitress from Rossetti's? Or maybe Wilma Leonardo had put the pieces together and wanted revenge for her lover's condition. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning and jumping at every sound outside our new house. At 2:30 a.m. I got up and checked all the locks on the doors and windows. At 3:15 I looked in on Gina, making sure she was safe in her bed. At 4 o'clock I stood at the kitchen window and watched the empty street, searching for any sign of surveillance. Nothing. Just the quiet suburban night and my own paranoid imagination. The next afternoon I dropped Gina off at Luna's therapy practice and drove downtown to Pioneer Courthouse Square. My heart was hammering as I walked through the busy plaza, scanning the faces of tourists and office workers and street musicians. At exactly 3 p.m. someone sat down next to me on the bench I had chosen. I turned to look at them and nearly fainted from shock. It was Wilma Leonardo. She was nothing like I had expected. Instead of the glamorous homewrecker I had imagined, she was ordinary-looking, maybe 40 years old, with brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and tired eyes behind designer glasses. "Hello, Katrina," she said quietly. "I don't know who you think you are." "I'm the woman who was sleeping with your husband," Wilma interrupted. "I'm also the woman who knows you switched those wine glasses." My blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" Wilma reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Because I have photographs that say otherwise." She opened the envelope and showed me a series of pictures. Me leaving the table at Rossetti's. Me standing in the hallway watching Enzo pour something into my wine. Me returning to the table and switching the glasses while he was in the restroom. The photographs were grainy and taken from a distance, but they clearly showed me swapping our drinks. "How did you?" "I was there that night," Wilma said. "At the restaurant. I couldn't stay away. I wanted to see Enzo one last time before we implemented our plan." "What plan?" Wilma's laugh was bitter. "Oh, come on. You found the documents. You know exactly what plan." I stared at her, trying to process what she was telling me. "You were part of it. Part of the plan to eliminate me." "It was my idea," Wilma said simply. "Enzo was too soft. Too sentimental. He actually felt guilty about what we were going to do. I had to talk him into it." The world seemed to tilt sideways. This ordinary-looking woman had convinced my husband to murder me for money. "Why?" I whispered. "Because I was tired of waiting. Tired of being the mistress. Tired of sneaking around and pretending to be happy with the crumbs he threw me." Wilma's eyes hardened. That money was going to be our ticket to freedom. A new life together without any complications. "Complications? You mean me and Gina?" "Exactly." I felt sick. "And now? What do you want?" Wilma smiled, and for the first time, I saw the evil that lived beneath her ordinary exterior. "I want what's mine," she said. "Half of your inheritance. The $3 million that should have been ours." "That's insane. I'm not giving you anything." "Then I'll take these photographs to the police and tell them what really happened that night. How you discovered our plan and decided to turn it against Enzo. How you switched those wine glasses and watched him drink the poison that was meant for you." My heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. "No one will believe you. You're just a scorned mistress trying to cause trouble." "Maybe. But do you really want to take that chance? Do you want to risk going to prison and losing your daughter?" The threat hung in the air between us like a loaded weapon. She was right, I couldn't risk it. Even if the police didn't believe her story, the investigation would destroy everything I had built in Portland. Luna would lose her job. Gina would be traumatized. Our new life would be over. "How much?" I asked quietly. $1.5 million. Half of the inheritance. I don't have that kind of liquid cash. Most of it is invested. Then liquidate it. You have 1 week. Wilma stood up and looked down at me with cold satisfaction. Oh, and Katrina, don't even think about running. I'll find you wherever you go. This is the age of social media and digital footprints. There's nowhere to hide anymore. She walked away, leaving me sitting on that bench in the middle of downtown Portland, surrounded by happy families and street performers and people living normal lives. I had escaped one nightmare only to find myself trapped in another. That evening I told Luna everything. About the blackmail. About Wilma's photographs. About the impossible choice I was facing. We could go to the police ourselves, Luna suggested. Tell them the truth about what Enzo was planning to do. Make you the victim instead of the perpetrator. With what evidence? All the documents are gone. Enzo can't testify about his own crimes. It would be my word against hers, and she has photographs. What about hiring someone to deal with her? I stared at my sister in shock. Luna. I'm sorry, but this woman is threatening to destroy your life. To take your daughter away from you. Maybe it's time to fight fire with fire. The thought had occurred to me, but I couldn't go down that road. One act of violence had been enough. I wasn't going to become a serial killer to protect my secrets. No, I said firmly. There has to be another way. But as the days passed, I couldn't think of any other options. Wilma had me trapped just as surely as Enzo had been trapped in his paralyzed body. On the 6th day, I withdrew $750,000 from my investment accounts, half of what Wilma was demanding. It was all I could liquidate without triggering financial investigations that would attract unwanted attention. I arranged to meet her at the same bench in Pioneer Courthouse Square, carrying a briefcase full of untraceable cashier's checks. But when I arrived, Wilma wasn't alone. A tall man in an expensive suit stood beside her, someone I recognized from Enzo's law firm. Thomas Mitchell, one of the senior partners. Mrs. Valdez, Thomas said with a cold smile. What a surprise to see you here. My stomach dropped. Mr. Mitchell. I didn't expect. Wilma told me the most interesting story about your husband's tragic accident, Thomas continued. Fascinating stuff. Really makes you think about the nature of justice, doesn't it? I realized with growing horror that Wilma had recruited an ally. Someone with legal knowledge and connections. I don't know what she told you, but... She told me that you eliminated your husband, Thomas said bluntly. Well, attempted murder anyway. And she has photographs to prove it. The briefcase felt impossibly heavy in my hand. What do you want? Simple, Thomas replied. We want it all. The entire inheritance. $3 million. That's impossible. I can't. You can and you will, Wilma interrupted. Unless you want these photographs to end up on the desk of Detective Sarah Rodriguez at Portland PD. She specializes in cold cases, did you know that? I'm sure she'd find your story fascinating. I was trapped. Completely and utterly trapped. I need more time, I said desperately. You have 24 hours, Thomas said. Transfer the money to these account numbers or we go to the police. He handed me a business card with bank routing information written on the back. Oh, and Katrina? Wilma added with a smile. Don't think about disappearing again. We'll be watching. I drove home in a daze, the business card burning in my pocket like a piece of evidence from hell. $3 million. My entire inheritance. Gina's college fund. Our security. Everything I had fought to protect. Gone. That night, I sat in my kitchen staring at my laptop screen, cursor hovering over the bank transfer page. With a few keystrokes, I could make this all go away. Wilma and Thomas would have their money and I would have my freedom. But it felt like giving up. Like letting Enzo win, even from his hospital bed in Oregon. You're up late, Luna said, padding into the kitchen in her bathrobe. Couldn't sleep. She sat down next to me and looked at the laptop screen. You're really going to give them the money? What choice do I have? There's always a choice, Katrina. You taught me that. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. He was right. There was always a choice. I had proven that the night I switched those wine glasses. What are you thinking? Luna asked. I'm thinking that some people never learn their lesson. The next morning I called Thomas Mitchell's office. I have your money, I told him. But I want to make the transfer in person. To make sure there are no technical difficulties. That's not necessary. It is for me. $3 million is a lot of money to send into cyberspace. I want to see your faces when it goes through. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Fine. Meet us at Pioneer Courthouse Square at noon. Actually, I was thinking somewhere more private. My house. 1247 Hawthorne Boulevard. Come alone. We're not idiots, Katrina. We know you're up to something. I'm up to paying you $3 million to leave me alone. But if you'd rather do this at the police station. Another pause. Fine. We'll be there at noon. I spent the morning preparing. Not for a money transfer but for war. At exactly noon, Wilma and Thomas knocked on my front door. I let them in, leading them to my living room where my laptop was set up on the coffee table. Where's your sister? Thomas asked, looking around suspiciously. Taking Gina to the park. I didn't want my daughter to see this. Smart, Wilma said, settling onto my couch like she owned the place. Children shouldn't witness their mother's humiliation. I opened my laptop and pulled up the bank transfer page. The money is ready to go. Just need you to confirm the account numbers. Thomas leaned forward to read the screen. As he did, I pressed a button on my phone. What was that? Wilma asked. Just turning on the recorder, I said calmly. For my own protection. Turn it off, Thomas demanded. I don't think so. I stood up and walked to the mantelpiece, where I had hidden a small digital camera behind a framed photo of Gina. You see, I've been doing some research of my own over the past week. I turned to face them, holding the camera where they could see it. Did you know that Thomas here has been embezzling money from client trust accounts for the past 2 years? Fascinating paper trail once you know where to look. Thomas went pale. That's impossible. You couldn't have. Amazing what you can discover when you hire the right private investigator. Jordan Torres sends his regards, by the way. Wilma looked confused. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that your partner here is facing federal charges for wire fraud, money laundering, and breach of fiduciary duty. Turns out he needs my $3 million to replace the money he stole from his clients. You're bluffing, Thomas said, but his voice shook. Am I? I pulled out my phone and showed them a series of photographs. Thomas entering and leaving various banks. Thomas meeting with known money launderers. Thomas's signature on falsified documents. How did you? The same way Wilma got her photographs of me. I hired someone to follow you. Funny thing about criminals, Thomas. You always think you're smarter than everyone else. Wilma stood up abruptly. This doesn't change anything. We still have our evidence against you. Do you? I smiled. Because I have something better. I walked to the kitchen and returned with a manila envelope. Inside were the original documents that Gina had brought me from Enzo's office. The bank statements, the emails, the forged life insurance policies. The evidence of Enzo's plan to murder me, I said. Including emails between him and Wilma planning my death. Thomas grabbed the papers and started reading. His face went white. This proves you were part of a conspiracy to commit murder, he told Wilma. She can't use those, Wilma said desperately. It would implicate her too. Actually, I can, I replied. Because I'm not the one who initiated the murder plot. I'm the intended victim who fought back in self-defense. I had spent the past week consulting with 3 different criminal defense attorneys, using hypothetical scenarios to understand my legal position. The consensus was clear. If I could prove that Enzo had tried to murder me first, my actions would likely be considered justified self-defense. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to give me those photographs and the negatives. You're going to sign statements admitting that you attempted to extort money from me under false pretenses. And then you're going to leave Oregon and never contact me again. Or what? Thomas demanded. Or I take all of this evidence to the FBI and let them sort it out. The attempted murder plot, the extortion scheme, your embezzlement, everything. Let's see who ends up in prison first. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, Thomas spoke. We want immunity. You're not in a position to negotiate. We have those photographs, which show me defending myself against attempted murder. Good luck explaining to a jury why you're trying to profit from someone else's crime. Wilma and Thomas looked at each other, having some kind of silent conversation. Finally, Wilma reached into her purse and pulled out the envelope of photographs. Fine, she said, throwing them onto the coffee table. But this isn't over. Yes, it is. I gathered up the photographs and fed them into my paper shredder, one by one. This is very much over. 20 minutes later they were gone. I had signed statements from both of them admitting to the extortion attempt, and I had destroyed all evidence of my role in Enzo's poisoning. I was free. Finally, truly free. The coffee shop in downtown Portland buzzed with the usual morning energy. Business people grabbing their caffeine fixes, students working on laptops, mothers pushing strollers and trying to have adult conversations. I sat in my favorite corner booth, reading the newspaper while waiting for Luna to arrive. The local news section had a small item about a former attorney named Thomas Mitchell being sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for embezzlement. Justice had found him after all. Wilma Leonardo had disappeared entirely after our confrontation. No forwarding address, no social media presence, no trace of her existence. Sometimes people just vanished when their schemes collapsed around them. "Sorry I'm late," Luna said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Traffic was terrible." "No problem. I ordered your usual." My sister looked happy and relaxed. A far cry from the worried woman who had helped me through the darkest period of my life. Her therapy practice was thriving, and she had recently started dating a kind pediatrician named David. "How's Gina?" she asked. "Wonderful. She made the honor roll again and her art teacher says she's exceptionally talented." At 6 years old, my daughter was bright and confident and completely unaware of the darkness that had once surrounded our family. She still asked about her father sometimes, but less frequently as time passed. I told her that Daddy was still sick and couldn't visit, which was technically true. "Any word from Oregon?" Luna asked carefully. I knew she was asking about Enzo, though we rarely discussed him directly anymore. "His mother calls occasionally with updates. He's in a long-term care facility now. The paralysis is permanent and his cognitive decline is getting worse." "Do you feel guilty about that?" It was a question Luna had asked before and my answer was always the same. "No," I said simply. "He made his choice when he decided to murder me. I just made sure the consequences fell on the right person." We sipped our coffee and talked about normal things. Gina's upcoming school play, Luna's vacation plans, the new restaurant that had opened down the street. Normal sister conversations about normal life events. The kind of conversations I never thought I'd have again. As we were getting ready to leave, a familiar face caught my attention. Jordan Torres, the private investigator, was sitting at the counter reading a newspaper. He looked up and saw me watching him. For a moment our eyes met across the coffee shop. He nodded slightly, a gesture that could have meant anything or nothing, and returned to his paper. "Someone you know?" Luna asked. "Just someone from the past," I replied. On the drive home I thought about the choices that had brought me to this moment. The night I discovered Enzo's betrayal. The decision to turn his plan against him. The courage to stand up to his accomplices when they tried to destroy me. Every choice had led to consequences. Some good, some terrible, all necessary. I pulled into the driveway of our house. A beautiful colonial that I had purchased with my inheritance money, the same money Enzo had tried to steal. Gina was in the front yard, drawing chalk pictures on the sidewalk. "Mommy," she called, running over to hug me. "Look what I made." She had drawn our family, the two of us standing in front of our house holding hands and smiling. No father figure in the picture. She had unconsciously edited him out of our story. Children were resilient that way. They moved forward accepting whatever normal looked like. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, hugging her tight. That evening, after Gina was asleep, I sat on our back porch with a glass of wine, watching fireflies dance through the summer darkness. The wine was a nice Cabernet, not the same vintage from that night at Rossetti's, but close enough to remind me of how far I had traveled. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment my blood ran cold. But when I opened the message it was just spam. Some mortgage company trying to refinance my house. I deleted it and put the phone away. The past was behind me now. Enzo was trapped in his broken body, paying for his crimes every day. Wilma was gone, hopefully learning that some people couldn't be intimidated or destroyed. Thomas was in prison where he belonged. And I was here in my garden with my daughter sleeping safely upstairs and my sister living just 10 minutes away and a future full of possibilities stretching out ahead of us. I had won. Not through luck or accident, but through intelligence and courage and the simple refusal to be a victim. Some people would say what I did was wrong. That I should have gone to the police, trusted the system, found a legal way to protect myself. Those people had never watched their husband pour poison into their wine on their anniversary. Those people had never discovered that the person they loved most in the world was planning to murder them for money. Those people had never had to choose between being a victim and being a survivor. I chose survival. For myself and for my daughter. And I would make the same choice again without hesitation. The fireflies continued their ancient dance through the darkness, appearing and disappearing like memories. But I wasn't looking backward anymore. I was looking ahead, to all the bright tomorrows that Enzo had tried to steal from us. The future was mine now. And I was never letting anyone take it away again. As I finished my wine and prepared to go inside, one final thought crossed my mind. A piece of wisdom that had taken me years to understand. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to become someone you never thought you could be. Sometimes survival requires a strength you didn't know you possessed. And sometimes, justice comes not from the courts or the law, but from your own willingness to fight back against those who would destroy you. I had learned all of these lessons in the hardest possible way. But I had learned them. And that knowledge would protect Gina and me for the rest of our lives. The game was over. I had won. And the victory tasted sweeter than any wine I had ever drunk.